From CBC and Doug McLean, Golden Bears Pandas analyst, along with the Stingers.
I think the older this kid gets, you're starting to see glimpses of what we're not privy to inside that room.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, now we're starting to see these guys put a stamp on this team. I think that culture that they're creating, instead of having it top down where it has a trickle down effect, I think it's working both ways where it kind of dictates what happens with the executive and the hockey side of the front office.
EST Hangout, weekday mornings at 9, only on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Tom Gazzola and Sean Bell take you on a hot lap around the NHL with Hello Hockey, Saturday mornings at 10, only on Edmonton Sports Talk. The Elks Call is the newest Edmonton Elks podcast located in Edmonton, discussing everything Elks. Join friends of EST, Scout and Catherine, Friday nights at 8 on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Join friend of EST, Guy Flaming, for The Pipeline Show, Monday nights at 8 and Saturday at noon, as he has you covered with CHL, CJHL, USHL, NAHL, NCAA, and U Sports, plus the World Juniors, Frozen Four, and NHL Draft on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Get to know the winners, props, plays, parlays, and more with Nielsen and Hustler. Weekday mornings at 11 on The Lock Shop. Only on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Catch up with friends of EST, Andrew, Mike, and Kayla, as they get you in the huddle with the Edmonton Elks on the Turf District. Thursday nights at 8, EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Friend of EST, Eric Thomas, takes you around the track all the way to the checkered flag on Raceline Radio, Tuesday nights at 8 and Saturday morning at 9, only on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Join Murray McCourt and Curtis Stock for tips and tales from courses around Edmonton and area with the VIP Golf Show, presented by the Tailor Made Performance Center at the Ranch, Sundays at 8:30, only on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Get all the latest news and takes on everything Oilers with Dustin Nielsen and Tom Gazzola on the Oil Stream. Live at noon, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Only on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
What's going on, everybody? Thursday night football, week 16 in the CFL. Lots to get to. P. Greg is going to pop by at some point today, probably in about 30 minutes, and we will catch up what's going on over at Coolbet, getting some player props for tonight's game, build a little early partner parlay for the weekend as well, give you a little bit more time to hammer that as we work our way through this episode of The Lock Shop. Chris is on the YouTube chat right now. It says, tied one on last night and woke up this morning with a Coolbet account and $400 deposited in it. That's what's up. So I like that. That's the $200 max bonus with the match if you use the code LOCKSHOP at Coolbet.com. Huss, who hasn't been there before, right? Like, who hasn't signed up for a sports betting account when you've been blackout?
You're asking me that question? There's been a few, although to be honest, we've had such a great run and experiences with Coolbet. I have been pretty exclusive, but I do have many friends and many folks that mentioned to me, I'm not sure what the circumstances around them and what time they got on board with this here. But Chris, hey, however, just best bet, don't unload that entire 400 in that present state. Give yourself a little bit of time before you lock those wagers in. But good to have you aboard in the lock shop.
Oh, that's just an absolutely great way. Richardson says, smooth transition from the hangout to the lock shop. I have my Coolbet account open. Let's go, Jets. Now, this is the dream, Huss, right? Like, this is the dream. I like to imagine us eventually doing like a live show in a concert hall, and everybody's just on their phones, and we're just going through, and there's 1,000 people, and we're like, hammer it now, and everybody's betting. But I like the idea of Richard setting up almost like he's managing a military op with a bunch of different screens, and we're in the middle, and he's got his Coolbet account here, and he's just like, he's investing. Like, he's investing. I like that. I like that vision.
Yeah, that's the early slate on NFL Sundays where you're looking at live bets. By the way, one thing, speaking of live bets that we didn't talk about, the live betting opportunities in the late slate last Sunday when the Commanders were down 21-3 to Denver. And of course, that Giants game, 20-0 at halftime. They'd been outscored 60-0 for the season and then came back and won.
Yeah.
That was going to be on top of those if you feel like you've got a good. I have a feeling we might have a large deficit to overcome at some point in tonight's game, although I'm not sure that the team that'll be down is going to be coming back to do it. But that's going to be fun. We got a big CFL slate to get to, and of course, Thursday night as well.
I like Mark also on the YouTube chat today. YouTube chat is going on the Lock Shop right now, which I like. Of course, if you're listening on EdmontonSportsTalk.com on that live stream, get in, be a part of the show, whether it's fantasy football questions or you want to talk about what you're on tonight for this Monday night or NHL futures or whatever. Just hit us up, 780-218-9999. That's why we created the text line. Mark says, I woke up after a bender and saw that I was betting upon Japan in baseball. He was betting on Japan in baseball. You've been there, but you do that sober. You do your baseball betting sober, don't you, Huss?
It depends. It depends. Listen, Major League Baseball, yes. But listen, if we're going to roll in and maybe get a little piece of the KBO, love the Korean baseball organization. And that was the time. I mean, remember in the dark days of the pandemic, when we were sitting around, going, what the heck are we doing? Ping pong was huge in the first few months. But yeah, God bless the KBO. I really came to appreciate the bat flips in the KBO.
They didn't mess around, hey?
Shout out to the KT Wiz. Became my favorite team through all of this. But yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be honest. I'm not hitting a lot of Japanese or Korean baseball right now because there's some big games in the majors that we're hitting right now. And football is back. And I just came from Jets training camp, raced back to here for the Lock Shop and for Winnipeg Sports Talk. And as we well know, hockey is back. We've got a lot of futures to talk about over the next couple of weeks. And then we drop the puck in the second week of October, and I'm looking forward to it. But I can wait right now. We got so much football to talk about. I'm looking forward to sort of easing into hockey season and continuing to be all over these football slates in both 3-down and the 4-down game.
Yeah, just quickly, because I saw some people talking about hockey drafts and stuff in the chat. So I don't know if I told you this. If not, I'm going to repeat the story because it's hilarious. But I was down in Lethbridge. We were doing our hockey and football drafts, and it's a long night. Like, we didn't even start our football draft till like 8, finished it, got into the hockey draft at about 10:45. We're already into it. It's like an 18-round draft. And we start basically what we do is after every 5 rounds, you do a shot. The whole group does a shot, and that tails in. So anyway, a few of the boys who don't drink very often are just hammered. And my one buddy Shorts, who lives in High River now, I pick him up on the way down, and he's got 2 kids. He's a banker. He's busy. So I could tell that he's getting into it pretty good, right? And we do a 5-round prospect draft before we get into our actual hockey draft. So all the top end draft picks from this past year get drafted. And we're waiting for him, and he can barely see see his phone. He's looking at his phone. I'm like, dude, you got to make a pick. He's like, just a second. So I go over to help him, and I get his phone, and all I see is he's typed into Google, best pick of draft. Like he just went into Google and Googled best pick of draft. And we were all like, and we're in the 4th round. So he's like trying to find a sleeper. Like we're in the 4th round of this prospect draft. So that would be like the equivalent of the 2nd round of the NHL entry draft. And he's Googling all he could Google, and he couldn't even put enter. Like he couldn't even search it. It was just in the Google search bar. It said best pick of draft.
Yeah, best pick of draft. And then he rolled up to the podium and picked Leinenkugels or Yingling or some other beer brand, which was not on the board at the time.
So bad. We've had a lot of good moments in that draft. There's a couple other ones just in this draft, but we've been doing it for like 12 years. That one's an all-timer. Getting so wasted that you Googled best pick in draft. Like, just so good. So anyway, hockey draft season, upon us here in a little bit, but that one was an all-timer. This one is in from the Dougler on just my Twitter account today. I once hit an awesome 5-way parlay and was up $300. Got drunk and played online roulette with the winnings. Got up to $4,300 and then lost all of it. So once again, this is why we like to partner with Coolbet, because it says stay cool, bet responsibly at Coolbet.com.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You got to know when to back away from the table, or your VLT or whatever it is. Don't look the gift horse in the mouth, I believe they say. So when you're nicing up, it's more than acceptable to just back away, take a bit of a timeout, and then make a decision on it going forward. But hey, it's a good position to be in if you're way up and you're on a heater. I don't blame you for maybe want to keep going on.
Huss, Blue Jays. Let's quickly hit on that. Then we'll get into our CFL picks. Then we'll transition into Thursday Night Football. And then Pete Greggy will join us. Patty will pop by from Coolbet, give us his thoughts on Thursday Night Football, maybe work on a little partner parlay for the weekend here. First of all, Kikuchi doesn't sleep 13 to 14 hours a day. That was confirmed yesterday. It was a little bit of a joke. I don't know if you saw that, but apparently
I don't want to know. I don't want to live in a world where Kikuchi does not sleep 13 to 14 hours a week. Are you telling me this?
Well, we said this morning at our show, we're like, you know what? I'm even more impressed because we got to have a day thinking about him sleeping 13 to 14 hours and then realized after that he's hilarious and he pulled off a great joke on everybody. So I thought that was great yesterday. But the Blue Jays, man, another one that they had to have, and they get it done.
They did get it done. Now, I did have the perfect streak of the week did end because I actually, and this was funny, and I don't know if you, Chaz, is in the chat.
He's there.
Recount what happened yesterday. So, we'd had 2 winners on Monday. We had 2 winners on Tuesday. So I was going back to the Jays. I was going to pick them on the money line, but I figured, you know what, let's get a prop in there as well. And I hilariously went on the under 7.5 strikeouts for Kevin Gausman. Gausman was unbelievable last night. And hey, it ended up being somewhat of a push. I bet a little bit more on the money line than I did in the pitching prop. So it ended up being okay. But I hooked up with a friend after work and we went out for happy hour and we're sitting there and the game is on at the bar we were at. And we're bullshitting about whatever. And, we're now into the second inning. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go quickly. It's 0-0. It's just going into the third, I guess. I'm just going to quickly check on the strikeouts because obviously it's 0-0. And I pick up my phone. And before I was even able to go into the app to check the strikeouts, I see a tweet from Uchaz going, I've never been so conflicted about a pitcher going 5 strikeouts in the first 2 innings. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And it was fun. He was absolutely brilliant last night. And Jays are on a bit of a run right now, getting some timely hits, pitching back big time. While we're here, just let's touch on this game quickly for this evening. Jays are an underdog, moneyline underdog right now, -133. And I think the big reason for that is the pitching matchup. Barrios has been good, but Yankees ace Garrett Cole is on the mound. And, we know like Garrett Cole's record isn't great, but that's because the Yankees stink and they've been so up and down so far this year. But I don't think there's any doubt that it's a much taller task to beat Garrett Cole than it is pretty much anybody else on that rotation. So that is why we're looking at plus 118 for the Blue Jays tonight. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is close. I mean, Berrios has had a strong season right now, and they really are feeling it. And again, the teams around them keep on winning, so the pressure is not diminished at all because of this 5-game winning streak. They had to do it, frankly, after falling flat on their face at home last week against Texas.
We'll see if they can continue that run and obviously monitor what's going on with the Rangers and the Mariners as well. If you are listening right now and you want to chime in, hit us up, 780-218-9999. Two guys and a goalie coming up here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Winnipeg Sports Talk coming up at the end of the hour as well. You can also hit us up on the YouTube chat anytime. Hit us up in the comment section. We'll try to get to a few of those. Canadian Football League, Week 16, buddy. This season is flying by. And I was on a Zoom call yesterday with Rick Campbell, and we were talking about that. The finish to the Lions and Red Blacks game, and obviously he loved it with the way it went down. I'm not sure what Bob Dice would have said about the final minutes, but he said highly entertaining, great for the league. And I asked him, I said, this has been a season because how it's like coming out of the pandemic, attendance is down, ratings weren't great, players weren't playing well because they hadn't done what they do in a long time.
Yeah.
Like this year, we had just this last week against the BC Ottawa game. I mean, Ottawa's like 3 or 4 of these games this year where you'll remember them for a long, long time. I feel like the Canadian Football League this year has had a major resurgence in the level of entertainment that the league was really known for a long time.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, I listen, I know there's a lot of people that maybe don't give the CFL a chance, but if you've been tuning into these games on TSN, with particularly outstanding play-by-play work in the Western Division in particular, I must say. Listen, obviously there's been some games that haven't been particularly close, but for the most part, and often with you calling the game, there's been some absolutely thrilling games. I mean, there wasn't a lot of people in Winnipeg that appreciated BC coming back because of, how much tighter that made the West last week. But, I mean, it was thrilling. And let's not forget, I mean, Ottawa did that to Winnipeg earlier in the season with the infamous Crumback game. And that one, Dusty, I mean, we mentioned live betting. That one was off the board.
You couldn't have got that.
Was literally over. So, yeah, there has been some awesome games so far. And I think that, I mean, listen, we've seen the cream rise to the crop. I think the playoffs are going to be awesome. I mean, the Western Division playoffs will be great. Still so much at stake for the Bombers and Lions playing for home field because I think home and the bye going into that West final is going to be so massive with the quality of teams. And I think we all just assume that it's going to be the Toronto Argonauts. But again, that is why they play the games. And they frankly won't really have played a meaningful game in a month and a half or almost 2 months by the time that they play at home in the East final. So still lots to be determined in the rest of the league outside of the East, but an interesting slate of games this week with the Bombers on the bye, getting ready for that big Grey Cup rematch next week here in the Peg against the Argos.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that game. That should be absolutely phenomenal stuff. All right, let's get into this. Let's see if we can put together a little partner parlay in the CFL this week as well. Doubleheader Friday, doubleheader Saturday. For those of you who enjoy watching my games, I've got one this week. I've got the BC Lions and the Elks on Friday night, which is kind of nice because I get to stay home for a weekend, which works out extremely well.
Home weekend.
Home weekend. It works out well. First hockey practice for Marshall's team on Saturday, so I actually get to be there this year, which is nice. Riders and Red Blacks out in Ottawa. Riders 1.5-point favorites on the road here, Huss. Is there any way you can back the Red Blacks in this spot, I guess I'd ask?
Probably not.
No.
Probably not. I mean, listen, I don't mind a slight home dog, but I have just been burned so much by Ottawa this year. I mean, I was really high on them at the beginning of the season. Obviously, Masoli went out. After Crum had that win, I sort of got back on them. But they have just been, I mean, unfortunately, they've kind of been doing what Edmonton was doing earlier in this season. That's finding ways to lose games. They've had a number of very, very winnable games, but they just haven't been able to get the job done. And to be honest, coming back at home after the way they collapsed in that last game, I'm not sure where the mental state of the Ottawa Red Blacks is right now, knowing that they're probably missing the playoffs, a lot of pressure on the coaching staff to, just have this team perform better and be able to finish. And then you got a team like Saskatchewan coming in that I think, well, let's just say they're very much due for a win. They got to figure out how to stop somebody. I think I did the math. I think they've given up 88 points just in their last 2 games. They had the 50 burger dropped on them by the Bombers in the Banjo Bowl. And I think the Elks put up 37 last week in that game in Saskatchewan. So
they're dead last in the league. They allow more points than anybody.
Well, good news, because you're playing against one of the worst teams in the league, and you might be able to get those numbers down a little bit. That being said, I do think that they have the potential to score some points. I mean, this is a 1.5 point spread, essentially a pick 'em. I just think the Riders are a better team right now. I know they're traveling. I know they're on the road, but I don't know about you. If you can make a case for Ottawa, I'm all ears, but it's pretty tough to do that, especially coming off the sting of that collapse last week against BC.
I can't do it. I mean, there was, I think I saw, wasn't there a fight in practice? I mean, it's been pretty nasty in Ottawa right now. So, they're struggling mightily. I look at it from, I still think the Riders are a pretty decent football team. I think their secondary has been dealing with some issues. That's a weakness for that team. I think the Riders secondary needs some significant help. They can get pressure. They've got pretty good defense in the middle of the field. It's just, I think the secondary, Nick Marshall's been caught a couple of times this year, maybe being a little bit too aggressive, and they're missing some pieces there due to injury as well. However, I do think offensively they should be able to score points here on the road against Ottawa. And if you look at their last 4 games for the Riders, okay, impressive wins at home against BC and Winnipeg, monster bare butt spanking in the Banjo Bowl, not the end of the world, whatever. And then you lost to a team that I think is playing at a pretty darn high level right now. It's not like they didn't lose to the 0-9 Elks. They lost to the Elks, who have won 4 of their last 5 now, right? So their 2 losses are to the team that's first place in the West and a team that's arguably playing the second best football maybe in the West right now. So Ottawa's just not at that level, and they're trying to put them at the level of the Riders right now, and I just don't see it at 1.5. So I'm going to get with you here on Sask minus 1.5 on the road to open up. So that's an easy one for the partner parlay if we want it. What about this Edmonton BC game, 6.5 in Edmonton?
I'm already in on Edmonton. We've been talking about it for the last couple of days. I jumped on them at plus 7.5. The line is plus 6.5, and I still like them in this case. Hey, the Edmonton Elks look nothing like the team that couldn't get out of their own way earlier on in the season. And they got a quarterback that can keep them in games, that can turn a game around with one player too. And maybe most importantly, and I mean, you're closer to the team and are seeing this week in and week out. I mean, it seems like they've got their mojo back. I mean, there is a bit more swagger of this team. They actually have confidence, which was completely absent earlier on in this season. And let's face it, much like that game against Saskatchewan last week, they owe BC one. Well, they owe BC a lot because they haven't scored a damn point against them in 8 quarters so far this year. I don't think that is going to be the case this week. Is on a heater. They're a big home team now, Dusty. A couple weeks ago, I called the home winning streak. I wouldn't be surprised if it continues. But I'll tell you what, I was quick to hit it all. Might be another one of those Dustin Nielsen, what is happening thrillers at the end. But if that's the case, big home dog, you know me. I love that. Give me the points.
I've been dropping a lot of Are You Kiddings Me lately. I have not dropped a What Is Happening in quite some time. So give us something crazy at Commonwealth on Friday. I'm going to get with you here on the Elks plus 6.5 at home. They didn't score in the first 2 games, shut out 27 and 22-0. And if I recall, I think I did at least one of those games, possibly both. I don't know. It all mixes together here throughout the season. But as much as the Elks couldn't do anything offensively, I thought defensively they kind of held up the Lions for as long as they could. This was the offense couldn't stay on the field long enough, and the defense eventually got tired, and then the BC Lions sort of put them away. So I think it's in a position now with Trey Ford that, not only are they much more of a threat offensively, but they're going to be able to sustain some 5 and 6 and 7 minute drives, which will allow their defense to get some rest and do a better job against the BC Lions offense than when they played in the other 2 games this year. So I think that's my sort of main driver behind it. Plus, they've been running the ball extremely well. I mean, they were up over 250 yards in the last game in that last win. Brown had the best rushing game of any running back in the league this year. And then Ford is just a cheat code. I've talked with coaches around the league who are like, we don't know if spying him even works because he's just so fast. He just runs by everybody. So, I mean, maybe this is a welcome back to reality game here for the Elks, but I don't think so, especially since BC has sort of been hit and miss the last little while. So I like Edmonton plus 6.5 as well, buddy.
I'm telling you, the new reality for the Edmonton Elks is they're a pretty good football team, and they can hang and play, I think, with just about anyone in the Canadian Football League. So, let's take the points. Would have been nice if we did this, a couple days ago.
7.5.
All saw it. And I do think I don't think there's a lot of action early on in the week for the most part for CFL. But I don't think it's a coincidence that we talked about that, got a couple bets in there, and a few other lock shoppers jumped on it.
You know who the action is in the Canadian Football League, right? It's Edmonton and Winnipeg. Like, that's what we're doing. So move those lines a little bit. Montreal, Calgary, afternoon game on Saturday. The Alouettes 1-point favorites. I think this was 1.5 earlier in the week, but Alouettes are 1-point favorites on the road in Calgary. Where are you going on this one, buddy?
Well, this is a tough game, but I and to be honest, neither of these teams have really given us much of a reason to make a case for them over the course of the last month. I mean, Montreal was a heck of a lot closer in that game at home last week against Toronto after getting pumped by 29 the week before. But this is still a team that I think is regressing to the mean after a bit of a smoke and mirrors start at 6-3. Montreal has lost 4 games in a row and now travel out to Calgary to take on what has to be an absolutely desperate football team. I mean, Dusty, if we're right on Saskatchewan winning and getting to 500 at 7-7, a loss by the Calgary Stampeders would all but pretty much eliminate them. So I think we're going to see a team playing like their season depends on it, which it does. Montreal essentially still very safe for the playoffs because, of course, they're in a division with Ottawa. And I don't think, the funny thing is, I guess Calgary could get to 5-9. And if they deliver a loss to Montreal at 6-8, there still is that possibility of that East crossover. So I think circumstances, but also I'm just out on where Montreal is at right now. I think Calgary will bring their best. They're at home. Season's on the line. We're getting them still as an underdog.
Yeah.
I'm going with Calgary.
Montreal has 2 wins on the road this year. One's against Ottawa. The other was against pre-changes Hamilton. And pre-changes Hamilton was not a good football team. So they've beaten 2 bad football teams on the road so far this year, and that's it. I think you made the best point that either of us could make when you said Calgary. Maddie, you could have just walked across in front of the camera. Awanik just crawled underneath. He just crawled underneath the camera. I got distracted anyway, Maddie. I was just going to say they're desperate. Calgary has to have this, and they've been really close pretty much every time. So I think Calgary at home against a Montreal team that's been struggling mightily, getting a point there, I'll get with you on Calgary +1. So we're 3 for 3 so far. Hamilton, Toronto, when I logged on earlier this morning, we were doing the Coolbet hotlines on the Nielsen show, the line was 10. Right now I'm seeing it at 9.5. Argos -9.5 home against Hamilton Huss. Who do you like in this one, buddy?
I don't like either of them enough to consider them for the partner parlay.
The parlay is locked in, I think. We're good, right?
You know what? At some point, the Argos, and maybe we saw this last week, I think are going to maybe take the foot off the gas a little bit. So I guess I'd probably lean towards taking the points with Hamilton. And obviously Hamilton looked good last week against the Bombers at home. it is just hard to just because we've had this conversation before, and I've taken big points against the Argos earlier this year. And I mean, the Argos more often than not, especially at home, have been winning by double digits and really pumping their opponents, especially the teams that are in the East Division. This is my least favorite play of the week. And put it this way, I think to actually bet it, I'll see if we get it back to 10 or 10 and a half is where it was. But I think for purposes of the picks, I will take the points, and we'll see. Hey, if Toronto's going to let up in any game, I'd prefer it would be next week when they're here in Winnipeg. I don't think they will be, though. And I think they'll probably be looking ahead to that game as well as the big test. This rivalry with where these teams are at, maybe not quite what it has been in past seasons. So I guess sign me up for the Ticats plus 9.5 or plus 10.
I'm torn on this one. I fully agree with you. It's not going anywhere near our partner parlay. So we've got our 3 games locked in there. I just feel like such a fool after last week listing off all these Argos double-digit wins and being like, the Argos only win by double digits. And then they go and need to squeak one out against Montreal, who'd lost 4 in a row at that point. And now I'm going to come back here and go like we basically 6 days ago, I said, you can't bet against the Argos on the spread. But I'm sitting here looking at the 9.5 for the Ticats and thinking I have to be on it. Once again, not overly confident, but Hamilton's got wins over BC and Winnipeg. Now, since they beat BC, they did lose to Toronto by 13. And that one was at home at Tim Hortons Field. So maybe the Argos just have their number, but I think this is a Ticats team that's slowly improving. Powell's got a great connection with Tim White. You know, can they execute that in this game? Ticats plus 9.5, but not a heavy play, I would say. So.
All right. Just before we get to the NFL, and we'll do that with Patty.
Yeah.
Let's lock in this partner parlay.
Okay.
We've got Elks plus 6.5. Now, here's the funny thing. The Riders are minus 1.5 at minus 115. The money line is minus 133. Calgary is plus 1. So we've got to go on one side or the other at minus 112. Do we just want to basically put money line bets in on Saskatchewan and Calgary and throw the Elks in plus 6.5?
Yeah, well, because it's our parlay. We can move. Can we move things around ever so slightly? Because I'm thinking from a value perspective, what if we did money line Riders, money line Stamps, just get a little bit more value there, and then take Edmonton to 7.5?
Well, I mean, we can do that. That might be, I mean, it doesn't give me the option to do that right there, right now. Like if we just put it in at 6.5, along with the Riders money line and Stamps money line, it's at plus 547. Okay. So we're probably looking at something in and around 6-1 to start at least before all the lock shoppers get on there and maybe get it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I would think that line, because I mean, it's minus 112 at plus 6.5. Well, why don't we bring in Pat?
I guess let's bring in a guy who can help us with this. Hey, Pat, we're building our CFL partner parlay here. We want to go money line for the Riders, money line for the Stamps. We can take Edmonton from 6.5 to 7.5 to throw into this parlay. Is that all right?
How much do you think that would?
How much is that going to move the odds? You think?
I think it's going to move it a touch, but I think it's still going to give the lock shoppers some value.
Yeah.
And I think I know a guy that will be able to make that.
Well,
we usually boost the number anyway.
We get the boost anyway, right? So I don't know. Huss, do you think we need it? Do you think we need it? It would suck if BC wins by a touchdown, you know?
I don't really, but at the same time, I have already bet this game when it came out at 7.5. So, I mean, yeah, I like that idea. And, you know, we might take a listen, we took that extra half point or extra point last week on,
and what happened?
Was it Miami or it was San Francisco?
It was the Niners game. Yeah.
And that did end up being key. So, you know what? Maybe we just do that and we'll see it. So yeah, Edmonton plus 7.5. Obviously, that'll move the line or number a little bit. And then Riders and Stamps money line. We are in agreement for the partner parlay to finish up our CFL week.
Feel pretty good.
6, did you say? Wow.
Yeah, feel pretty good. Patty, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm just cooking. I'm just in the lab right now. So just run it by me one more time. So it's Elks plus 7.5.
And then
Yep.
Calgary money line, Riders money line.
Calgary and
look at this guy. This is it. This is behind the scenes at Coolbet, folks, right here.
So,
man, is that another new Coolbet hat? A black one though with the white label?
It is. Don't worry.
Nice.
You can talk to Jake.
Okay, yeah, that's nice too.
He's working on shipping some stuff out to you guys. But yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe a little lock shop contest for some of the lock shops.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Just
I like
throwing
that.
something out there.
Great idea.
Yeah,
but
really
looking at, I'm guessing it'd probably be around without the boost, probably like 485.
Okay.
So we could maybe get it to like plus 500-ish for you guys.
So that goes to show though how big of a move that is from 6.5 to 7.5. That 1 point. And I get it. It's over massive. It's over a big one because it's 547 if you just put it in
pre-boost, if just on its own.
Yeah. And that's with Riders minus 133 on the money line, Calgary minus 105, Elks minus 112 at plus 6.5 comes out to plus 547. So yeah, it's probably around plus 500 or just in thereabouts. But as they say, that 1 point was so key. Although I do like the Elks this week. I do like the Elks.
Hey man, if you want to take it to 6.5 again, we can, but that's on you if they lose by a touchdown.
Yeah, no, listen, I've already betted it 7.5. You brought it up. I don't mind being a little more conservative at the end of the day. A win's a win if we can get it, and we can be a little bit more.
I don't mind doing that when we get the little boost. You know, it's just get some love anyway. So that's kind of nice.
Well, the request is in.
All right, perfect. All right,
love it.
We got the folks in the lab.
Beautiful. Thursday night football here. I don't know. Does this get ugly, Patty? Do you think this game gets ugly tonight? Is there like a sneaky backdoor cover late that's gonna piss everybody off, or what?
10 and a half's a lot of points, but this is also a Thursday night game, and usually it favors the home team. The Giants have showed no semblance of what we saw from them last year, especially from a defensive standpoint. We saw them be able to at least put up points on the board, unlike what we saw in the opener against the Cowboys, mind you, that was in a monsoon. Cowboys clearly were ready. I think you can kind of have that as a write-off. I think it's a concern that one of the worst teams in the NFL, led by Josh Dobbs, was able to go toe-to-toe with one of the peskiest teams that we saw last year. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe they just won too many crazy games. Maybe Daboll got everything out of this team last year that he possibly could, and this team's coming back to reality. On the flip side, 49ers are a wagon. They're everything and more that we expected out of this group. So with that being said, the alarm bells kind of go off in my head. I'm not going to bet the Giants. I think this is probably going to be a blowout, but man, it would not surprise me if we see this being a backdoor just because of the way things work in football over the years with these games, with these big spreads. And hungry dogs run faster. Like the Giants need this desperately. They need it to be close for their psyche to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, that them getting in the playoffs wasn't a fluke. But with that being said, I'm not touching either side. I'm going to go a boatload of props, but I have no interest in betting a side here. If I was going to, I'd probably take the Niners, but just that 10.5 scares me for a backdoor cover.
Picture this. The clock's running down. The Niners are up by 13.
Sean
the line
McVay.
Is 10.5. And Brian Daboll rolls out the kicker for a 3 points at the end of the game to get it to 10.
Not 2 weeks in a row,
cover
man.
the spread.
Not
Sound
2
familiar?
weeks. Not 2
familiar,
weeks.
Anybody?
That would be awful.
We'll be talking about that McVay kick last week in week 2.
He should be investigated.
Yes,
potentially in prison. This is awful.
Well, okay. Obviously, I was on the Niners, and thank God again, back to the lock shop, the partner parlay. Thank God we had that extra point. But the more I think about it, like if he says it had nothing to do with the spread, I call bullshit 100%. But I am thinking like he basically would have helped all of his home fans and anyone that had backed their team. So I kind of like the move, to be perfectly honest, for a head coach to go and do it, even though I was on the wrong end of it. Like, if my coach of my team was in a situation where the game was simply over, and on that final play, he could do something that would allow everyone that backed his team to cash their tickets, I kind of respect it. I'm not going to lie.
It happens in college football all the time. Like coaches,
they know the number. The boosters heavily invested. Take care of them.
Exactly. There are a lot of coaches that probably should have been fired from their program, but they cover a lot of games and they're keeping those boosters happy. It's like the coaches say, oh, they have no idea about the spread. They absolutely know. They 100% know, especially in college, man. There's a lot of deep pockets, and they're okay with a team losing to let's say an Alabama or LSU, whatever it may be. But if you could cover the spread, the wins, the losses, maybe they don't quite mean as much, and they'll be okay. But this is the NFL. We've never seen anything like this. McVay's a weird brain. He's done weird things before. I certainly think that he knew what was going on there.
Haas, are you going to get on the Niners here, or are you going to take the Giants plus the points? Just for our official picks.
Oh God, I couldn't possibly. I mean, and listen, I'm a guy that normally likes to take points. I can't possibly take the Giants in this. I'm going to take San Francisco. I think this game could be over at halftime. I think it could get really ugly. Listen, I think the Niners. Well, I am quite interested in the total, which is 43.5, but I might take an alternate total on under for the Giants. Like, I don't know how they score.
Thank you. That's what I've got here. Like, how do the Giants, like the Niners have scored, or the Giants have allowed 71 points in their first two games to teams that aren't anywhere close to the one that they're about to play. So they're not gonna stop them. So how in the world are the Giants going to score? Like, how do they score in this football game? Like, I'm sure, they'll get some points, but how can they possibly score enough to keep pace with the Niners tonight against the Niners defense? Like, I'm not even sure how the Giants score at practice right now, let alone against the Niners defense. I'm on the Niners 10.5 here for sure, because I just don't think the Giants have any weapons with Saquon out to keep it close. So Matt Brady's going to come in and cover this spread. Come on.
His rushing total's 30 yards.
Yeah.
The Giants have played 6 quarters. They had been outscored 60-0. 40 of those by a very good Cowboys team. 20 of those by a team that we've all thought has potentially an 0-17 season in them. They essentially played 10 minutes of quality football at a time where I'm not sure whether Arizona was purposely calling off the dogs or what, but it changed.
But just the Cowboys comparison, Huss. Like, the Niners are on that level. You know what I mean? Like, and look what happened when they had to play against the Cowboys. So
no, it was that, again, the Cowboys defense, but the Niners defense is right there as well. So I expect to wake up on Thursday and talk about the Giants. Fortunate to be 1-2 after playing less than a quarter of half decent football. And that was against the Arizona Cardinals when it was essentially garbage time and they came back and won it. This isn't going to be a huge play because it is a big number and it is a Thursday night game and sometimes weird things happen. But I think the Niners win this one running away. I'll lay the 10.5 on them. And I was, getting ready to figure out what I was going to do for the play of the day. Couldn't help but look at a couple of those totals. McCaffrey, his rushing totals at 78.5. He's smashed 100 yards just in rushing in both of his first two games. And the Giants got lit up by James Conner last week with Arizona. So I think it's going to be a ton of CMC tonight as well. One thing I would love to see, and maybe we can get that in future games, but for a guy like McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson as well, I'd love, Pat, to see a combined yards from scrimmage prop that includes both their rushing yards and their passing yards. So at a certain point, we don't really have to technically choose between the two. We're betting on the entire body of work for the entire game. So that would be good. But I think it'll be a huge game for McCaffrey. The only threat to that is if they get up by 28 points or whatever and then have to just sort of call the dogs off. But I mean, he can crank 50, 60 in one carry. So I'm feeling good about that.
If they're up by 28, he already has the 78 rushing yards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny you brought that up right away because my Coolbet hotline of the day today on my show was McCaffrey over 78.5 rushing yards as well. So great minds on that front. Patty, you said you were going to stick to props and kind of stay away from the side here. Which props? I got a few that I like, but what do you like? What else are you on here?
So before I dive into that, to answer your question, Huss, yes, that's something we're looking into, adding 1,000%.
You have it for quarterbacks, right? Because I got on a Jalen Hurts passing yards combined with rush yards 2 weeks ago.
So
that's a weird one, though.
Was that through the bet builder? Because what I was going to say is,
maybe it was
through the bet builder.
builder.
We do have combined odds for quarterbacks and for running backs.
Okay, that would have been bet builder then. Yeah, that's right. Okay,
so we do. So that's one thing that you can do, Huss. Obviously, you can do Christian McCaffrey combined rush and receiving yards, and then throw in maybe, let's say, just a teased line for the 49ers to cover a smaller spread. But yes. Again, this is the great thing about Coolbet. You guys want something, we can put in a request. It's not going to happen next Sunday, but we'll try our best to get that, especially for the games, like you said, like the unicorns, like the Christian McCaffreys that get a lot of touches in the air and on the ground. That being said, Run CMC, one of our daily exclusives, McCaffrey to record 75 plus rushing yards and plus 25 receiving yards and a touchdown, which is crazy. That sounds like a lot of things, but for McCaffrey against a weak team here, it's only plus 240. Still a good number, but that just goes to show you how much faith the book has in McCaffrey in cooking tonight, and also just the fact that it's a big spread. If they're going to cover that spread, McCaffrey's going to play a huge role in this. I like his over on the rushing props like you guys do as well.
Jake, Jake is in the YouTube chat right now, and Jake is saying 49ers team total over 27 minus 112, which I like at minus 112 for that team total for the Niners. Good eye, Jake.
I love it.
Good eye, Jake. JBM coming through
for
us.
I love that. And by the same token, I like the under on the Giants team total. Yeah. And that's why I'm taking the Niners to cover the
And
spread.
what was that number at, Huss? What is the Giants team total? What's it, like 17 or something?
So you've got three options. It's essentially, if you want to take it under 15.5, you'll get even money. Under 16, obviously, and 16 would be a push. It's minus 111, and under 16.5, it's minus 122. I'm going to probably take the even money. Like, I don't think they get to 14 in this game tonight.
So
that's where I'm at.
So I think I'm going to stay away. Like, I love Jake. Actually, that was one of my best bets, is the over team total. I really like that.
Wait, did Jake steal that from you? My goodness.
No chance. All right. No chance. Jake doesn't listen to what I say. But when looking at the Giants, it totally makes sense. Like even under 16.5 at minus 122, even the even money, like I don't see them putting up more than 2 touchdowns. But that being said, at that, like, I mean, Thursday nights are so crazy. I could see Danny Dimes breaking for a big rush near the end of the game somewhere, or something happen where they do just magically go over that number, but it's still a blowout. Like at that point, I think you just take the 49ers to cover the spread. You're getting good value at minus 106. I would go with that. I think that's the safer bet. Maybe I'm being a bit of a chicken here, but I mentioned I do like some props here tonight, and I kind of just teased it. I like Daniel Jones over 37.5 rushing yards. He's hit this total in 4 of the last 5 games dating last year. He's hit the over. He's hit over in this total. He's hit both of them, obviously, this year as well. There's no Barkley tonight, which we've talked about, which is huge. So I think Daboll's going to have a few designed runs for Daniel Jones to establish some of the run. We saw him do that a lot last year, but he's also going to be running for his life. Let's be honest. This pass rush is elite for the 49ers. So I think he's going to have to get out of the pocket and create some plays with his legs. 37.5 yards. I absolutely could see this happening. I really like that. I'm already on the rushing yards that you guys talked about, so I won't get into that. Deebo Samuel over 4.5 receptions with 8. Do we know about Brandon Ayuk? Is he in? Is he out? I know he was questionable last I saw. Regardless, don't even answer that, because even if he is in the lineup, I think Samuel's hitting this. He's hit it twice already this season, and he's averaged about 8 targets per game in the 2 games. If Ayuk's out, I think we see heavy dose of Samuel. Even if he isn't, I think over 4.5 is easy here. Over 3.5 field goals. Duh. It's a primetime game. We're taking it, especially after what we saw on Monday. The 49ers are averaging 3 field goals per game through the first 2 games. And on the flip side, I think the Giants know points are coming at a premium tonight. If they're in the red zone, they're automatically thinking about kicking a field goal. They might even kick a field goal on 3rd down with the way that this offense is playing. I really like it. It's not just because it's a gimmick bet for us, or it's a bit. I really like it, especially at plus 135. And looking at some of the touchdown props, I kind of like Juice at plus 700. He hasn't had a single touch this season so far, but I think Shanahan likes to get creative in some of these games that might be a blowout. Try some different things. I would not be surprised if the fullback gets involved.
Yeah, give the fullback a little love on prime time. Reward the man.
Plus 700 to find the back of the end zone, which that was higher earlier today when I bet it. I think it was up to plus 900 when I got it. It's already down to 700. I also would think about sprinkling him at 28-1 for the first touchdown of the game. Again, don't unload your bankroll. I'm not.
That's why we call it a sprinkle.
Whale play.
Yeah,
but it's just a little sprinkle. So those are probably my favorite props for tonight.
Well, especially with Ayuk questionable, I don't mind George Kittle, to be honest. I think some kid that might be a good chance. Kittle always steps up in prime time as well, and obviously Debo, but Christian McCaffrey. Guys, before we go, I got to run very quickly. Do we want to quickly get a couple thoughts in on partner parlays?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to rush it. Patty, what do you like for a partner parlay? Huss, maybe we can close it later or something. But what do you like, Patty, for a partner parlay?
To be totally honest, I know we were on the Packers last week and the Saints this past. I kind of like the Saints. I don't want to rush it either.
Yeah, okay.
I really don't want to.
You know what? Let's just wait. You
got to dig a little deeper here, fellas.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to throw out a couple that are like the Lions for the partner parlay, because we can't have it on 3. If we take it to 2.5, it's minus 130. So it's another 3-point spread. We can get the Titans at plus 3.5 at minus 119. I like either of. No, I said last week, and this is a third. This is in case of emergency break glass. No.
The reason why I didn't say anything, I was trying to find other games, because I think my best bet is the Chargers, and I hate myself for it, man.
No.
That game is off the board.
I'm going to try to, you know what? I'll make some time to come on. If not, we'll get Jake or we'll send over the picks.
Pop on them.
Oh boy, were they generous to us. I thought we were going to get it at plus 500.
Yes.
Plus 555.
Beautiful.
Good stuff. All right, we'll finish off that NFL partner parlay tomorrow.
I'm out of there.
We'll see you later, buddy. Patty, we'll check in maybe with you tomorrow, maybe with Jake. All right,
I'm out.
There you go. See you boys in the exclusive section. All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football 5. I was just trying to feverishly hop on Coolbet there to bet that CFL partner parlay before we move the line. The Fantasy Football 5 brought to you by Century Casino Sports Bar and Lounge, the NFL home of Edmonton Sports Talk. We're talking Fantasy Football 5. We're talking Ian Rappaport. We're talking Monday and Thursday night football pick'em challenge. And, of course, we're talking Lieutenant Eric Monday and Thursday nights at the Century Sports Bar and Lounge, Century Casino on Fort Road. Go and join him tonight. I know I've seen a lot of people in the chat today say that they will be popping by there tonight to see LTE, and you'll know it. Every Monday, every Thursday. And we're also going to have a Thursday in early October. We're taking the whole crew. We're going to give away some spots for you to come join us for a Thursday night football game as well. So that should be a lot of fun at Century Sports Bar and Casino. If you have any fantasy questions right now, hit us up. 780-218-9999. 780-218-9999, and we'll get to a few of those. This one comes in. It says, my league dresses 2 QBs, which gives 6 points for TDs, plus passing yards 25 is a point. I'm thinking of sitting Justin Fields for Browning if Burrows is in fact hurt. Thoughts? My other QB options are Josh Allen, Mariota, Darnold. This is like a deep league. I feel like Greg and Lacombe. This is a dynasty league. No, I think Fields has a tough matchup, but I don't think I can start Joe Burrow's backup ahead of Justin Fields, especially when Fields says he's going to be cooking a little bit more, unless his coach wants to absolutely sewer him. But I don't know. I think I'd probably stick with Fields. I'm starting Fields in some 1 QB leagues. He has let me down so far, but I'm hoping to bounce back here at some point. As for Thursday night football, let's dive into this, put together a little bit of a list. Must starts, maybe starts, don't starts for tonight's action. This is nice. This is much better as you lead into a Thursday as opposed to kind of scrambling and trying to find some guys to play on Monday. So, I mean, to me, your must starts on one side of the ball, Debo, CMC. Those guys are 2 must starts. I think Darren Waller would probably be a must start for me as well on the Giants side of things. Outside of that, there are no other must starts for me on the Giants side of things. Daniel Jones, if he can have a game, if you're really weak at quarterback, possibly, but I hate it. So he's not a do not start for me, but he's darn close to it. He would be a maybe start. If Brandon Ayuk is out, George Kittle is a 100% must start. If Ayuk is in, Kittle nowadays to me is like an 85% start guy. It totally depends on who you have. For some reason, you're very strong at tight end, then maybe there's some other options for you. So you're likely going to start Kittle. The only other guy that I would even I claimed Matt Breida in a few leagues where I'm weak at running back. I'm not even starting Matt Breida. So watch for Breida to have 2 touchdowns tonight or something ridiculous like that. But the rest of that Giants offense, they're all non-starters for me. The only one that I would even possibly consider starting outside of Waller would be Darius Slayton, because at least he gets a decent target share. Slayton's had like an 18% target share. I think he's got over 30% of the air yards so far as well. So that would be one. I've got Slayton on bench in like 3 leagues, deeper leagues. Haven't even thought about it. Don't plan on starting him this week. I got way better options at wide receiver. But if you've had a couple wide receivers go down to injury or you just drafted horribly, he's a maybe start. But these other guys, Breida, don't want to start him. Campbell, Hodgins, Hyatt, I know he can do some highlight reel stuff. I just don't want to start any of these guys this week against the Niners. So you're looking at Waller as a must start. CMC and Debo as must starts. If Ayuk plays, he's probably a must start. If he doesn't, Kittle is 100% a must start. You just have to try to find out where that ball is going to go. Purdy, I mean, it depends on your quarterback situation. It'll probably get you some points if you want to play it safe on that front. But those are your must starts. Chris says, do I need to find a different kicker than San Francisco? Sorry, man. As I've said before, and those who used to join me for the Fantasy Football Extravaganza, which is where the Fantasy Football 5 feed is now found, I don't talk kickers. Just don't do it. Can't do it. I don't like being in leagues that have kickers. I don't want to talk kickers. In my CFL Fantasy League this week, I have to start 2 kickers, which is tough because my Canadian spot is Brady Oliveira. He's on bye. My only other decent Canadian that'll put up any points is Sean White. Return game to Edmonton. Maybe there's something there. I'm hoping for a ton of field goals on Friday night because I have Dean Faithful now in my kicker spot and Sean White in my Canadian spot. I know you're thinking, Dusty, you are a fantasy football degen. And I am proud to say that, yes, I am. CFL Fantasy, this is the thing. I've talked about this a few times before we wrap up the Fantasy Football 5. Those are your must starts, your maybe starts, your do not starts for Thursday night football here on the Fantasy Football 5. The Canadian Football League, I know they've got like weekly fantasy when you can kind of play like a DraftKings scenario. They need to set it up for season-long leagues. 16 leagues. You go 14 leagues, but 16 leagues. And that's how you get people sucked in, right? You sign up with 5 of your buddies, and you do trades and all that fun stuff. I have to have a little sit-down with Commish, Mr. Ambrosi, and say, listen, man, let Edmonton Sports Talk head up the CFL fantasy experience, and we'll try to take that to another level. Because once you get that going, it's lights out. It's lights out. Everybody will be on board at that point, and I very much look forward to somehow convincing the Canadian Football League to get set up. So you can go to CFL.ca and basically like you would do at ESPN or NFL, NFL.com fantasy, but with season-long leagues. That's the plan. That's the goal of the Fantasy Football 5. That's going to do it for another episode of Fantasy Football 5. Remember, every day around this time. So if you want to slide into my DMs or hit me up on Twitter at any time you got a question, I will try to address it in this brief time slot after the lock shot before we dive into our regular noon programming, which today is 2 guys and a goalie with myself, Joaquin Gage, and Matt Cassian, and that'll be up in just a matter of moments.
The EST Hangout.
Matawanek, Tom Gazzolo.
Yeah.
As well as we got Mindarwell from CBC and Doug McLean, Golden Bears Pandas analyst, along with the Stingers.
I think the older this kid gets,
Connor?
you're starting to see glimpses of what we're not privy to inside